Natalie, you've just come through a period of a lot of changes. This is like
Yes,
being in
Anthony,
class.
indeed I have. Would you like me to answer that?
Let me just start it first. Yeah, I don't even think I got to the question yet. We thought it was just a build-up.
Yes.
We're just kind of moving up towards it. No, but you have come through a period of a lot of changes. You left your band. You hired a new manager. Was there as much turmoil going on as it would seem? What was all that about?
Turmoil? It really didn't feel like turmoil. It just felt like a time to change. I mean, I'd been doing the same thing for 12 years. Probably like anyone who had the same job for 12 years and just wanted a career change. I felt like it'd be interesting to collaborate with some different musicians, but I didn't want to do it as a side project. I just wanted to make a break.
Were you nervous about it?
The thing that I was most nervous about was finding the right musicians to play with, because that was the most important thing to me. It's hard enough to find someone you can have a conversation with and feel a connection with, let alone someone that you can live with for long periods of time, as you do when you're making a record and touring, and still be able to create something with them. Making music with someone is really difficult if you don't feel a sympathetic relationship there.
If the Maniacs had just come off, a very significant and successful record, did you feel much either external or external pressure to try to follow that up, or had you made that decision before even doing that?
Well, the decision to leave the Maniacs was made 2 years before it was made public. So I feel that even though we had 2 successful records in that time, the Unplugged record and Our Time in Eden, everyone knew they'd be out of their minds to suggest that I'd do anything different, because my mind was really set on leaving, and I think the success of the last 2 records was just made me feel better about the decision, because I was leaving people with a bit of security. Sort of relieved any of the guilt that I'd felt about abandonment and things like that. I think it's universally proven that bands are very similar in structure to families, and it's strange. It's like an adopted family, and that the family was successful in many ways. Things seemed to operate, and that was the thing that actually I was frustrated with, was that everything felt like business as usual. I wanted a little bit more of a challenge, but like the keyboard player Dennis and his wife had just had a baby, and Steve's wife was expecting, and those were the things that I felt guilty about. Should I stay so that they have economic security, or do I stay until the kids are out of college? How long do I stay? And if I'm frustrated, should I be true to myself? But it's really probably intangible if you've never been in a band. Your destiny seems very collective, until you wake up one morning and say, no, I'm an individual, and I can move freely about the world without 5 other people attached.
Could you tell us a little bit about, how you grew up?
I came from working class stock, and my parents divorced when I was relatively young, so being the child of a single working mother, there were always issues of financial security. There was, growing up with the threat of poverty was something that, we always drove a used car, and my mother supplemented her income by painting houses in the summer, which I didn't see many other kids that I went to school with. I didn't see their mothers up on ladders all summer, painting houses to be able to buy our winter coats, which was what she was basically doing. We didn't have many luxury items. So even when I was in the band, up until about the 6th year, I really didn't think it was going to provide any security for me, and my family didn't either. I was constantly encouraged to, this was a good thing to do, and you got to travel a bit, and it was fun. Now go back to school and become something that will provide you security.
In those early days, when I first actually met you and saw the band, you seemed, you were still a teenager, and you seemed like somebody who was possessed when you were on stage. There was a real kind of sense of kind of artistic drive. Where did that come from?
I think it came from the music, and and performing. Just knowing that I was in front of people who were, I don't know, maybe it didn't come from there either. I mean, that's the same feeling comes over me now when I'm on stage. It's like a raw sense of honestly understanding who I am at that moment through the music. The dancing is completely improvised. I don't have any routine of any sort.
Like
And the singing, I think it's also because I was singing, when I sing my own music, that it's something that I invented and created and something that I'm giving to people. And there's something really powerful in that.
So what kind of criteria did you set for yourself in the music you wanted to make? Did you have a sound in your head? Did you know specifically what you wanted to do, or were you in a more kind of experimental mode?
Well, I'd say that the thing that I wanted to do is make a record very quickly, because I didn't want to deliberate about it and let it become too heavy. The weight of it being, this is my first solo record, and this is the defining record of my career. I wanted to get away from the trap that could create. What I wanted to do was just put out a record of all the songs I wrote that I felt best about in the year period after I left the band. And as far as sound, I wanted it to be very pure and very simple, because the Unplugged record taught me that you can just go on stage and perform live with a well-rehearsed group of people and a strong set of songs, and you could make a record. So all the months and months of laboring over a record weren't really necessary. I guess it depends on what kind of record you want to make, but that's the record I wanted to make.
It's also a sense, I think, or it seems, in which you try to establish almost a kind of communal feel. You bought a house during this period, right?
Mm-hmm.
And weren't you recording in the same place, essentially, where you were living, with the band around?
Right. And the house that I bought with the intention of building a small rehearsal space, recording studio, and having enough room for a band to live with me. At that time, I didn't know who my band was, but that was sort of part of the selection process. It's, could I live with this person? And it was a good experiment. I'm glad I did it. Now that we're rehearsing for the tour and the group is larger, I'm done with that experiment.
Right, they could go live somewhere else.
They could go find somewhere else to live. But it was a great thing to do, because we had to become a band that felt like we'd been together for years, and we only had weeks, months to do it. We actually, 5 months altogether that we worked together getting ready for the record. And then we worked in a residential studio too, Bearsville.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in Woodstock in the middle of the winter, and you can't get much closer than being in the studio 12 hours a day and then, through the snow back to your communal dwelling, We were close together for this record. I can't hide behind 10,000 Maniacs anymore. I am now, it's almost like I've become a brand name. Hand me the Natalie Merchant.
What was your sense of anticipation about the record? Once you'd completed it and you're kind of waiting for it to come out, at that point, did you feel more exposed than you had been in your career as part of a band? I mean, did you feel like you were out there in a way that made you more vulnerable?
I think the thing that made me feel more exposed was that this record was lyrically more personal.
Yeah, I mean, songs like 7 Years or Jealousy are not the sort of things that people are used to hearing from you. There's real kind of, maybe even in a dramatic way, a sense of a personal voice speaking, as opposed to, the kind of more atmospheric lyrics that sometimes you would write. Were you kind of conscious of that as you were working, or certainly after the record came out?
Right. More conscious of it when the record was out, and people started responding to it. But and I guess I just feel like I always have to remind people those songs aren't all about me, though I use first person as a device. So I think because it's a solo record and because first person pronouns are sprinkled throughout the record, I think a lot of people would think the record is completely about me. But I think it was also not working with a producer and being so involved in every step of the way, working with musicians who are really unseasoned. Jennifer, the guitar player, had really only played electric guitar for 1 year. She was 22 years old, never stepped foot in a recording studio before. So I had a lot of things to be a little bit apprehensive about, and I recorded the whole record without the record company hearing anything but a demo of 2 songs that was made in January of the previous year. So when Sylvia Rohn, who's the chairwoman of the company, came to listen to the record, I think that was the most terrifying moment of the whole process. You know, I'd paid for the whole record, and I wanted to deliver it complete to the company. Here's my vision, it's done. Ooh. You know, do you like it? And she liked it quite a bit. So that, I think, with every step of the process, I became more confident.
What's your relationship to, you know, kind of commercial success at this point? I mean, how important is that for you? You know, you've established yourself as, you know, an artist who's expected to sell a certain number of records. You know, is that, you know, something that comes into play either, you know, in your own expectations for an album that you would make or in your dealings with your record company? You know, how does that play out?
I'd be paralyzed if I was spending my time when I was sitting at the piano or at my typewriter, you know, writing lyrics. I'd be paralyzed if I was thinking about what will people think of this. So my theory is always if I please myself, then people will be pleased. And as far as the commercial success, the record seems to be selling as well, if or you know, even better than the 10,000 Maniacs records did. So I think any of the pressure that I might have perceived from the record company before has been completely, you know, eliminated. They're happy with the success.
What about critically? You know, you've gotten some hard hits on this record. You know, you've always been somebody who...
I hear.
You don't pay
read.
attention?
Well,
I see.
Well, I pay attention because people tell me what magazines to avoid when I go to the newsstand, but I don't read them myself.
Would it really bother you to see something, you know, negative?
It would. I mean, I expect that many people won't like what I do. I mean, there's a lot of music in stores today that I don't care for, but it's just always painful if it's something that, if you're an artist who, like myself, puts as much of herself into what she does, to have it heavily criticized is always painful. If it's constructive and I learn something from it, that's good, but I would respect that criticism more from someone who is actually, someone I was aware of what their achievements were, someone who is, say, a producer or a fellow musician, or someone I know who had been writing about music for years and years and years, and I really respected their opinion.
Another band that came up as, you know, roughly your contemporary and that, you know, had a lot of involvement with is, you know, R.E.M. Obviously, you're personal friends with Michael Stipe. You've toured with R.E.M.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there was certainly a sense early in the career of 10,000 Maniacs that R.E.M. almost kind of like loomed as a model or you know,
Big
kind of
brother.
direction setter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, they seem to have kind of veered off in a direction very different from yours. I mean, at the same time as you're talking about your music being soothing, they seem to have really gotten more abrasive lately. I was just wondering how you see that kind of ebb and flow.
Well, I think it's good for an artist to metamorphosize, and I think that's what they've been able to do with every record. I've seen them 3 or 4 times on this tour, and it's exciting, but I don't know if I'm being nostalgic or if, you know, just for personal reasons or what, but when they do a song like South Central Rain or Fall on Me, I get a feeling that I don't get with a lot of the newer material. So I always felt like pop bands with a spiritual side to them. I don't want to start sounding sounding a way that I don't want to sound, but I'm drawn to that, and REM had that. They have it still, but that's the thing that attracted me to them. I think the record Murmur, I probably listened to that 40 times the first 2 weeks that I had it. It was just, there was something about it that just touched me.
You know, when you talk about something like pop music with a spiritual side, you know, it seems like for a long time in your career, you know, I think it would seem like you felt really uncomfortable almost with the role of, you know, being the front person in a band, and, you know, some of your concerns maybe extended, you know, beyond what pop music seemed to represent. You know, at what point did you kind of settle in and feel like maybe you could do both? Yeah, right. What the hell? Why not be a famous right, singer in a great band?
What point was that? But certainly wasn't when I was at. Oh no, I won't mention that. It's just time. Whenever I find myself at a music event, like a music business event, I feel like hiding in the ladies' room, just hiding, you know, and just, you know, I don't belong here. I don't know why I do this for a living, and I completely.
Because it seems like a kind of convention of just business people, or
no, it's not so much the business people as a lot of my contemporary performers. Just feels like there's all these little subdivisions of musicians, and I never feel like I fit into any of those subdivisions. I always feel like I should be over in the novelist category, or the
right,
like
sure.
the you know, gardener category, or the you know, should have been a school teacher category. I don't know. I always, when I compare myself, when I go to an event like the MTV Music Awards, I sit in my chair and say, where do I belong? Where do I fit? I don't know. So those moments I still feel a little uncomfortable. But as far as, I think of myself as a singer and a songwriter. And I try not to get too involved in anything beyond that. I find it really hard to create like an alter ego Natalie, to travel around and go to events where I'm supposed to be Natalie Merchant. Like the brain, like I feel like that's the one thing that's really awkward about, for me, being a solo artist now, is I can't hide behind 10,000 Maniacs anymore. I am now, it's almost like I've become a brand name. You know, hand me the Natalie Merchant.
Exactly.
Can you get me the Natalie Merchant?
You know,
Boy,
Andy
if
Warhol
I just had the Natalie Merchant right now, I could, you know. It's like a 3/4 spanner or something. Get that Natalie Merchant wrench. You know?
Bring the Natalie.
You have been
We'll
accused of being too serious.
That's right, and politically correct. And
too concerned.
Do you have a sense about musical directions, you know, that you might be interested in trying, ways in which you might be veering off?
Well, I've always wanted to do a record that was more impressionistic. I've been collecting my dreams for about 17 years, and I have a pretty amazing collection of images that I've always felt were just too abstract. I always felt as a songwriter that I was really concerned about delivering a message of some sort, and I would like to try to make a record that is more about the other life that we all have, that we spend half of our time dwelling in, that is free of logic and, you know, just free association.
Sounds like kind of an aspect of, you know, kind of the opposite of, we'll say, one of the charges that's been leveled against you about politically correct. You know, right.
You know, the charge is leveled against you.
Exactly.
You hereby.
And now we're about to make a decision on them, so I hope that, you know, when the jury returns,
you have been accused of being too serious.
That's right, and politically correct. And
too concerned.
With the world around you.
With the world around you.
Live like a pop star. Come on.
Lighten up. So what are you getting at? Mr.
No, that
Curtis.
seems like another side. I mean, the more impressionistic, poetic kind of thing. I mean, because that's also something that, you know, earlier in your career, it seemed that there was a lot more of that. You know, that yeah, this kind of, you know, really fascinating, complicated poetry or something that you like to spin out in your songs.
I've made 6 records with 10,000 minutes and now one by myself. And for anyone who knows all the records, they can see that there was a beginning when I was more abstract, and then I drifted into more of like a phase of being someone who addressed issues in my songs. And that lasted for about 3 records, and then I've been drifting progressively away from that, and there was a moment when I really felt it happen for me, was during the Gulf War. I just felt that anything that I had written was completely impotent. It just felt as an artist, maybe there was no way for me to write a 3.5-minute pop song that was going to stop all the atrocity, or even a little bit of the atrocity that was around me. I just felt completely overwhelmed by it. It was the first, I mean, I'd been aware of covert wars that the United States had been involved in, but it was the first just full-scale, you know, out in the open slaughter of innocent people on both sides that I was aware of. And I just didn't feel like I didn't feel like being that girl anymore.
So what do you see ahead? Are you looking forward to being on the road? Or is that something? I know at points you've had some difficulty with that. I mean, are you looking forward to it now?
I think all performers have a point of difficulty on the road, but I'm looking forward to it. We just played in Boulder, Colorado a couple of nights ago, and first time in years I stayed up all night after the show at a party. At a series of parties, actually.
An ongoing, a movable feast, in fact.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
We had our designated driver, and we met these kids in Boulder, and they just kept taking us from party to party to party. And I was just talking to people and just having a great time, and ended up, you know, watching the sunrise, and thought, this is going to be fun. I like this group of people. You know? Haven't done this in a long, long time.